Hello and welcome across the nation. It is Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. You may not know it unless you're actively engaged in conservative politics, but there's this thing in the country called the State Policy Network. And it's a group of conservative think tanks across the nation. And those think tanks, some are better than others, but they come up with essentially a lot of conservative policy ideas for state legislatures. Arguably, in my mind, the gold standard for the longest time has been the Texas Public Policy Foundation, a brilliant group of men and women who have been decisively on the cutting edge of keeping Texas the state we know and love. And in large part, that leadership was to their former leader, Brooke Rollins, who then went to work as the domestic policy advisor for President Trump and is now starting a new national organization up in Washington, D.C. And Brooke, I got to tell you to begin, Brooke, that Josh Trevino tells me I should tell you that you're the greatest thing to ever come out of the University of Texas. And I know you're an Aggie fan, and I don't want to get in trouble with you.
Oh, my goodness. I'm going to, first of all, hello, wonderful Eric. Second of all, I'm going to strangle our mutual friend, Josh Trevino, who knows that my hot button is the Aggies versus the Longhorns. For all you Texas listeners, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I'm definitely an Aggie, for the record.
All right. So I'm really excited for you with the American First Policy Institute. And because I've been thinking for a while, it's funny the number of conversations I've had with people on, is there a way to take what was done in the last 4 years that clearly resonated with Black, Hispanic, and Asian voters, building up this unheard of coalition on the right that we've never seen before? And is there a way to build those ideas for a greater, better American tomorrow? And it sounds like that's one of the things you're looking at doing.
Well, you couldn't be more spot on. You know, there were a lot of amazing things out of the last 4 years. The lowest unemployment rates, the lowest poverty rates, the achievement of the American dream for so many who'd never had a shot before, unprecedented peace in the Middle East, bringing soldiers home, energy independence. But Eric, all of these, every single one of those issues, we who've been in the conservative movement, your listeners who've listened for a long time, we all knew this, right? We knew that the Founding Fathers' vision of less government and more freedom was not just better for a select group of people, but it was better for everyone. And the last 4 years proved that out in spades. But what was really exciting is for the first time, to your point, we started really breaking through with that message to African Americans, to Hispanic Americans, to blue-collar workers that realized, again, that the other side, that the left, their radical ideas and concepts, their big government, that had done nothing but keep so many of our fellow brothers and sisters in generational poverty. And guess what? We changed it in the last 4 years. So building that out, continuing the policy concepts and ideas, fighting for freedom in this country, and taking the narrative directly to the Americans, to the hearts of the people, and making sure they know what's at stake and who's fighting for them, that is at the top of the list of what this organization is going to do.
David Shore is a Democratic pollster, definitely a progressive. He essentially got denounced, defamed, and run out of the progressive movement for pointing out last summer that the polling trends on defund the police looked very bad for the left, that they did not like him saying that. And yet it turns out he was right, and he's got a lot of polling out now that shows it was Latina women in Florida, non-Cuban Latino female voters in Florida and Texas, that moved towards the President Trump, in large part because of law and order, and then Black and Hispanic men moving his direction because of jobs, which seems like a no-brainer to me. But I'm really actually curious if in the past you had George Bush, John McCain, Mitt Romney, all kind of made arguments on those issues, and yet for some reason they believed Donald Trump and went with him. And I'm just curious as to how you see why that happened.
Well, I think that the last 4 years represented a difference in the way we talk to the American people. I'll never forget talking to Rick Santorum, interestingly enough, about the Romney race, which, if we remember, he was sort of at the edge of the stage in the first debate, and at the end it was just he and Mitt Romney. But he said he knew we were going to lose that race at the convention when Mr. Romney had, a bunch of very similar looking people on the stage behind him, all CEOs and business owners. And what we did in the last 4 years, while our policies were good for the CEOs and the business owners, we made every speech, every event, every policy was about how does this affect the average American, the farmer, the blue-collar worker, the stay-at-home mom, the hair braider, who just wants to own a salon. How do we make these policies about them? And whether it was deregulation or tax cuts or fighting for school choice, that's how we, I believed, really began to change the narrative that our side is for the everyday American, and the left and the Nancy Pelosi's and the Chuck Schumers and the Joe Bidens and the Kamala Harris's, they're for the status quo. They're for the elites. They're for the Washington, D.C. power structure, and we are for America. And again, this president was unorthodox. He was unconventional. But in many ways, he was able to break through in ways that no one in our side had really been able to do before. And you saw that in those numbers you just mentioned.
Well, yeah, and let's go back to your days at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. A lot of what you guys did was really help make Texas a place to do business and attracted a lot of companies into Texas. And it was always the perception of, Republicans, these think tanks, the state policy network, they're for the rich, the CEOs, the professional corporation class. And yet underlying all of this has always been this sense of entrepreneurialism that seems now like the major corporations in the country are the new welfare class in the country, subsidized, given tax breaks, put at competitive advantages against the little entrepreneur. And Donald Trump, whatever people think of him, understood that there's this entrepreneurial spirit in America, regardless of race. And the corporations, the Fortune 500, the Republican elites and the Democratic elite don't seem to get it.
That's 100% right. And I'm glad you mentioned the Republican elites, too. I think that's an important piece here. I mean, certainly we're battling the left. We're battling a radical progressive agenda that really will destroy the country, will keep people in poverty for more generations that we may never recover. But in that, there is some complicity, if that's a word, complicity from the Aggie, but there is some complicit behavior from the sort of longtime Republican establishment as well. And I don't understand it, Eric. I can't imagine. Listen, you cannot like some of the tweeting, and I understand that. I really do. I was, part of it for 3 years. I had the front row seat. But at the end of the day, you can't disagree with the policy. And the millions of Americans, frankly, the millions of people in our world, but most importantly Americans, who finally had a shot at the American dream due to these policies. So, the America First Policy Institute, and thank you for bringing up my Texas Public Policy Foundation. I so appreciate that. The AFPI is really in the same vein and model as the Texas Public Policy Foundation. How do we find the right solutions for Texans, for Americans, that will ultimately give them a shot, a real shot at the American dream, and do it in a way where we're reaching out to Hispanics, Black Americans, blue-collar workers, those who've never really aligned with us or haven't recently, so that they can understand it is our policies and our fight that will finally give them a shot at what this country promises.
Well, look, I'm excited for you doing it. I really am. I know there are a number of groups out there, and my concern, my fear is that there are going to be enough groups doing this that they work at cross purposes. I hope that won't happen. If I had to place bets on which groups would be dominant, anything with Brooke Rollins involved is going to be the dominant group. And I mean, honestly, I like you. I'm your friend. I'm not just saying that because you're on the phone with me. I mean, look at what TPPF has done. And so given your leadership there, I'm excited for what you're going to do, because I do think you get it. And not just because you're driving RVs to Aggie games and actually associating with actual Americans.
There is a benefit to living outside of the Beltway sometimes, although I will say all the people on our team here in Washington are such freedom fighters. But listen, I couldn't appreciate that more. And I think that you are so right, and the way you frame the conversation is so important. And let me say about you, Eric, I'm so excited for what is to come and the voice that you will continue to have and build, because I believe we will win this country back. And when people mention, well, all the organizations that are being founded right now from former Trump administration officials, by the way, we are by far the biggest. We've got 40 staffers that have been working for a month, 2 months getting ready for the launch. former cabinet members. It will all be official in a couple of hours. You're going to love it. But ultimately, we're so outgunned by the left and by the Democrats. They have hundreds of these organizations, and we have a couple dozen. So if we can get this right and we can work together, which I know we can, and we can create a vision for this country, which I know we have and will continue to do, the sky is really the limit, and the soul of America will be saved.
Well, listen, I should probably leave it on that point, but I actually do want to ask you one more question related to that. We've got an existing conservative infrastructure, much of which is maybe 40 or 50 years old. And I wonder, how do you see the injection of new blood with a lot of traditional conservative ideas that, frankly, they're still time-tested and true ideas, but not necessarily the I don't want to be rude here, but some of the 40-year-old organizations that send out white papers and no longer actually rack up gains and wins and no longer talk to people outside of white paper people. How do you kind of merge this together? Is it even possible to try to build a cohesion on the right that doesn't exist right now?
Well, I believe that there is an ability to do that, and I think that at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, which granted again was a much smaller world than here in Washington, but when I sort of relaunched that 18 years ago now, including my 3 years in the White House, there was just such a disparate approach to working together, and we changed that in Texas, and you see the result of that, getting real policy done, changing the hearts and minds of our people. And now at the Washington level, there are some awesome organizations that today may be reevaluating, right? I mean, what the Trump 4 years proved, we completely changed conservative orthodoxy on a lot of different issues. And my goal is that there is 100% room for all of us, and that working together we can really, really make this work. And here's the other thing that I think is exciting, Eric. One of the things that AFPI is going to be doing a little bit differently is we're really going to focus in the states as well. So it really is sort of a marriage of TPPF, the Trump presidency, and then a national new conservative organization. But the real battle, while it is in Washington, no doubt, especially with Nancy Pelosi, et cetera, but the real battle for the country is out in the states. It's in Texas, it's in Georgia, it's in Florida, it's in Pennsylvania, it's in Nevada, it's in California, it's in Oregon. And so taking these concepts and building them out, not just for a Washington-focused group, but frankly for an every state-focused group, and working alongside these organizations, there's plenty of resources in the movement. We just have to do a better job of working together. And my goal is that the America First Policy Institute can lead the way with a new approach, but that everyone will come alongside and help us for the sake of the country.
Well, look, I'm glad I asked that. That's well said, and best of luck to you. If I can ever do anything to help, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm a big fan, and I'm just excited that you're going to be leading something like this.
Oh, Eric, well, the feeling is mutual. Thank you. Thanks to all your listeners, and we will definitely stay in touch. I'd love to have a more regular voice on your show as we continue to figure this out.
Glad to have you. It's always good to talk to you, Brooke. Take care.